So we're 10 seconds, or YouTube's 10 seconds behind. And that's streaming things on now on the channel, so that's fine.
Right, okay.
And then at 7, I'll just put the 30-second countdown in, and hopefully that should bring us on to business. 15 people watching. So all right, so you do know people are
You get
watching,
a wee
right?
ticker. Yeah.
I've got 16 now. Happy days.
God love them.
Oh, okay, they can hear us. Okay, right, shut up. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You'll tell by now that this is not our forte, fannying about on YouTube and mixing StreamYard with a live stream, but we will do it for you. Better late than never. The roundup, the long-awaited roundup of 24-25 in the EPL. I am Martin, your host, also in charge of all the buttons, and this is more stressful than any university exam that I ever sat. Jack's here. How are we doing, big man?
Yeah, like you mentioned there, it's been quite a while, so I have almost completely forgot everything that happened last season, but not knowing things has never stopped me talking about them before. So,
No.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
People love us for our shambles. And David Edgar rocking the last time Everton were any good.
Won a title, yes, that's right. Classic NEC one. I was saying to the boys before we came on air, listeners, that I bought this, and I was like, it was one of the first tops my parents bought me that was in a Rangers top, and I saw it in classic football strips. And I said, I'm having that, and then I was like, I'm never going to wear this. So tonight I was like, there's an excuse to wear it. And before we get started, Martin, thank you. It's Martin who's done all the techie stuff tonight, folks. So big round of applause for him.
Yeah, like the special kid that gets just a wee prize for turning up on Sports Day. Thank you very much for that. Before we get into reviewing the season that passed, and we've got a treat really, because we never really meet mid-summer, and there have been developments. There's probably stuff to talk about that we don't ever really talk about until we get back in August, and then we'll get into what everyone's here to hear, of course, which is the finale of the predictions and how bad our takes were at the start of September last year. Obviously, we have to start with on a sad note, the tragic passing of Diogo Jota. I think it's fair to say a favourite of this show, a favourite of ours. Very talented player, very impactful player. We enjoyed watching both for Wolves and Liverpool. And there's nothing much more new that we can say on just such shocking, tragic circumstances, with his whole life ahead of him, still got a career ahead of him. Champion must have been on top of the world.
Yeah, it was just a brutal read, and I think that's the bigger loss over and above what he was as a football player. It's a family that are dealing with this tragedy, and they're the ones that we need to think about at this time. But I just thought it was, as you said, so sad. And when you read more, about being married only a couple of weeks, and as you said, he was a champion of England. He'd just won with Portugal. He'd won with his national team. Wonderful footballer. And genuinely, I honestly don't think I've ever discussed football with anybody who didn't enjoy him as a player, who didn't like him as a player, who didn't enjoy watching him, who didn't rate him. And that's quite unique in the modern game, I think. And the tributes that have been paid to him is a testament to what he was like as a person. But I think it was sad for the world of football. It's sad for all of us, especially if you've had, and I've had my family where we lost people in a road traffic accident, and it brings that back. But as I say, the people that all our sympathies and heartfelt tributes go out to it as his family, because they are the ones who live with it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, very, very sad. Don't have much more to add. Everybody's read all the tributes, you know, and like David says, young family, childhood sweetheart, you know, and I think that always just makes it a wee bit, I don't know, they've been tight for so long, and the sudden nature of a car crash where it's like, it's done is, yes, sad, but I don't want to go too much into it. Thoughts are with his family, that says, childhood sweetheart, 3 kids under the age of 6 or 7, so yeah, absolutely horrible situation.
But we had to make mention. I think it's
absolutely.
It's
bigger than any we're going to talk about tonight. Absolutely.
No, it is. And when he signed for Liverpool, I think there was unanimous praise for that signing. Very smart. That makes a lot of sense. Clearly well loved there. And yeah, thoughts with everyone. And the story, David, was about Liverpool this season. I'm not giving any spoilers away to anyone who can't remember what we said at the start of the season. No one predicted Liverpool to win the title because, you know, City are this monolith. Arsenal had been so close, and maybe it was just at that next push, and you've got this huge legendary figure leaving, and someone coming untested at this level, coming from the Netherlands and Eredivisie, which should really contain a health warning. And I think if Slot,
with all due respect, yes,
there's been so many attempts there that they just kind of haven't really worked. And he just tinkered, not for the sake of it, and with the little tweaks that I think players felt, oh, right, that makes sense. It's not huge game changer. Well, it's not a massive change of what we do every week, but I can see the impact on the game, and it was just perfectly done.
It really was, and I'll be honest. I mean, last summer when he got the job, I was surprised at them going for him, because I thought it was such an enormous jump, because Liverpool are one of the top clubs in the world, right? One of the most desirable jobs in the world. And for coach of Feyenoord, who hadn't coached in a top 5 league, and as you say, some great coaches come out of the Netherlands, some others less so. Some have been suited to England, some others less so. I think more it was a case of looking at history, and we know what happened at Man United post-Ferguson. We know what happened at Arsenal post-Wenger. And I think that none of us felt there would be a massive collapse with Liverpool. None of us felt that Liverpool were going to be, you know, dropping way down at European places or whatever. But no, I did not see them winning the title. And I think that, yes, we're going to talk about the circumstances that the two clubs that I think we all thought of as being the front runners for different reasons had, by their own standards, poor seasons. But Liverpool still had to take advantage of that, and they did so. And the biggest tweak to me, Martin, is that they didn't have to play on the edge of emotion as much as they had to under Klopp. That they did have games that we've done enough here. We'll win this 2-0. We're quite happy. And they could see out a game. It was less dramatic, but that, in the course of a 38-game season, is a very good thing indeed. And they were very good at just dispatching side with a minimum of fuss. And for a side that hadn't been, you know, I remember Ferguson sides were good at this, but they had multiple titles behind them. The calmness with which they did this was remarkable. They were aided by a cheat code on the wing. And you could also argue a cheat code at centre back. 2 players who had magnificent seasons, but he got it right. He brought in, you know, the likes of Jones or Elliott whenever he was able to do that, bring in players who could contribute a little bit. And it was never in doubt. I mean, I think we first said November. I think we said they're winning it and they know they're winning it, and they never once looked like surrendering it.
Jack, one of the players David alludes to, we'll talk about both of them, but at centre-back, Virgil van Dijk, I haven't checked the recordings, but I am fairly sure all 3 of us in the not-too-distant past have said, nah, he's done. He looks tired, he looks slow. There was a time probably when City were absolutely at their apex and just far too much. But other teams, other strikers were really moving him about, and it's like, time comes for everybody. He's had this. We'll talk a minute if it is a kind of farewell, a coda, or whatever it may be. Whether he can do that again next season, I would have my doubts. But props to him for resurrecting something and coming out with a big finish, because it looked like it was tapering away a wee bit.
Yeah, because like he used to have these like fantastic stats, like along the lines of he never made a mistake leading to a goal and things like that in the past. And then there was one or two mistakes that maybe sort of shone through, and you thought, right, okay, you could see him on the decline. But he played every single minute up until the final away game, I think, last year, and 14 clean sheets within that. And he's so vital to the way they play. A league high passes to 2,800 or something. So he's vital to the way they play, and he did prove me wrong, because I did think he was not on the way out per se, but definitely on the way down. Now, we've mentioned that he played every single game. So your point there, Martin, how does that then impact him next season? But we're not here to speak about next season. We'll do that on another show. We're speaking about last season. So yeah, so key to the way that they play, like I says, the sort of numbers that you'd expect from a central midfielder when it comes to sort of possessions and touches and passes and things like that. So
and the qualities that you kind of measure and stat, the leadership. He is absolutely the leader of that side, and
he recreated his aura, Davey.
He really does.
That's what he. That's when they won the league, won the Champions League. He had, I think, something about them, and opposition players know that. Oh God, got to come up against him today. And that's
clearly the best centre back in the world back then. Like he was a level above everybody else.
Yeah, he was.
And then that slips, and that's where we're right. We can get like a team, one team that we'll talk about shortly, the former champions. When all of a sudden it disappears, and you're like, we can have a go here. But to get that back, I think is quite the thing. Boys, away back in January of 2018, the first ever Seagulls, I am fairly sure we talked about Mo Salah doing some sexy things. I think against City it might have been in a big Sunday evening game, Sunday afternoon game.
Do you remember the phrase Jack used?
It was lewd.
I believe it referred to a certain jewel part of his anatomy tingling.
He was electric.
He was.
And here we are, still. Yes. And he's again pulled something out his arse that was on a par, even better than when he was considered to be. I remember getting into that World Cup, and it ended kind of frustrating and tragic for him, but he's one of the best players in the world. I mean, absolutely that top 3-5 kind of bracket. Possibly not quite there, but that's relative to everyone else at this time. But Jesus, didn't see this coming. Well, we will get to that, but maybe not quite as good as this.
No, I didn't see it coming at this level. His stats are just stupid. It's not just the goals, and he had a remarkable goal scoring season, and it's not just the assists, it's both of them together. I mean, the amount of goal involvements, but the amount of games, Martin, and this is what I love. This is what a big time player is. You can get 20 goals, 25 goals. It's difficult in England, right? But you can do it at certain clubs, certain leagues. How many of them got you 3 points? How many of them when you were in a bit of bother? How many of them in the biggest games? That's when he delivers. Now, people will probably point to the 2 PSG games and the cup final, and they would be right there. But that does not in any way alter what he did for Liverpool in the league campaign. And by the way, I think he was up against the best left back in the world for PSG, who did shut him out twice. But he just consistently was there to bang in goals. He had a dip at the end of the season, but by then it didn't matter. It didn't matter. He'd already done the work.
But even that dip wasn't, stats-wise, that much of a dip. Like on the eyes, it looked like a dip, but when you looked at his contributions, I think he was involved in goals in 8 out of the last 10 Premier League games, something like that.
Yeah, and here's me saying he did that, because you're right, it was an eye test dip. It wasn't a factual dip.
It was a big eye test. I mean, you're talking about the PSG game, of course. He really was up against it, but he also looked like he hadn't seen a football before in open space. I mean, it was just a remarkable night and so poor in the cup. You're right. In Liverpool's season, it tapered away
Kind of
when
petered
everyone was
out,
talking about
yeah.
quadruples and whatever else. They had their fair share of 1-goal margins, maybe 2, some tight games. That game against Brentford, I think, away around January, February time, rings a bell and says, right, that's it. We're absolutely not going to two late goals. Yeah.
Oh, and it was your man, wasn't it? The boy who's probably going to leave, Darwin. But it was him. That's the game you think of.
I think, probably. But the few tight ones, which the sign of champions, blah blah blah. But I do wonder how those margins would have been managed if they had someone with them, breathing down their neck, or just ahead of them, or whatever. Because I think it's also fair to say, and it's not to do with them, they did their job and they pick up the silverware, but everything's relative to what's about you, and it's fair to say everyone that we would consider to be remote or serious title challengers had an absolute drab or far worse season. Jack, we'll talk about Arsenal. I do think timing now in football, given the physical demands, and there's been a lot of talk this summer at this nonsense thing that's happening in America. Turns out a European club's going to be the best club in the world. Who fucking knew that would be the case? But a lot of guys over there saying about fitness and about fatigue and about the kind of the physical demands. Teams are just going to have seasons off. I mean, they just are, where they'll just have to regroup and do a bit and get a breather and then kind of go again. And City definitely had one this season. Arsenal had a bit of one, but they just kind of timed their 2 good seasons at probably the worst possible time.
Yeah, I think we've had a chat sort of off air about timing and things like that. And while I think it played some part that they did so well without winning anything the previous couple of seasons, and it looks like it was bad timing, I'd still feel like, I'll say this, until it changes, Arsenal will Arsenal until they don't Arsenal. And I can't, I don't know if they would have had a poor season the season before, a season off, would they've, we'll never know. This is obviously pie in the sky stuff. Would they've challenged Liverpool more? Perhaps, but I still think they would have shat the bed against their Brightons, their Bournemouths, that they'll go away to go down. Fulham, for example, seem to always take points off them. Just these teams that they should be beating, and they just can't seem to beat them on a regular enough basis to win a league. And Arteta, I think, it's got to the stage now where I think he's sort of getting away with it a bit. And next season, if they don't win the league, they need to look elsewhere. That'd be my opinion. And even then, I would be dubious about giving him next season. I don't know. He's built a lot, and you can see where Arsenal have, where they were and where they are now, and he has made progress. But we speak about managers for jobs, and we don't know yet, is he a manager that can win a Premier League season? Are Arsenal a team that can win a Premier League? I don't know. I would have my doubts.
I'll come to David, because they're doing business. They'll look like they're going to do more where they need to, which of course is up front. And it's no surprise, league title winners have goal machines in there, Davy, from wherever they may play alongside that front three. Arsenal don't, and to be fair, they haven't. I still think they would have had a good old shout at it if they'd been in the kind of shape, fitness, everything that they had the season before the season just gone. I think they were just kind of spent a wee bit. But what do you make of their early business? A lot of Arsenal type signings in there. And do you think their main target up front will make the difference?
Well, this saga with Gyökeres now, they wanted him, they didn't want him, they really want him, they're not so sure on it. He's made his choice, but I mean, with all due respect, the guy has a release clause. So if you really want him, You can do this, and you can have him in early for pre-season. Like United managed to do that with Cunha. Were able to go and get him. Zubamendi, what I've seen of him, very good, but we don't know he'll transfer to a new league. But in fact, Liverpool, wanted him as well. It's pretty suggests he'll be a player. But yeah, it's a striking position. I think with Arteta, you're absolutely right. If they put in the season, I do take Jack's point right enough, because we don't know up until they're in that situation where they maybe establish a lead, how they got on with that pressure. But there is, we joke about the conspiracy, but the club does seem seized with this. And Arteta
He doesn't help.
No, he was moving into the realms of, I get you're trying to, put a brave face on certain things at times, and you don't want to throw the players under the bus. But the biggest way you can start to damage trust, I think, between a support and a manager is when a manager lies, right? Even if it's done with the best intentions. When a manager starts to tell fans that what they just watched wasn't what they just watched, that, I think, is usually a slippery slope. And he did give a sense of almost resenting that this fallow year had come when it had come. And it was almost like, this should have been our league title. We've been so good the last 2 years. We somehow deserve a title. And there was this sense, I felt, and I might be totally wrong, and see what the listeners think, a slight entitlement and a slight kind of, it's no fair, was coming out from them, rather than, I just got that impression.
Yeah. I think because they've tried to be sensible. They've tried to build gradually. It's like, right, here's our kind of big outlay here, and Jesus got them a wee bit, but not quite. But okay, that moves us on. Declan Rice is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
We can't do everything in the one summer. We can't get all these 4 or 5 players, but we'll do it incrementally. This is how it should work. We're trying to play the game here. We're trying to play within the rules. We don't have nation states backing us, blah, 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 blah. And you should get your rewards for your patience and your hard work. Very Presbyterian club, Arsenal, right? And when it doesn't happen, when you've got players breaking down because they've had 2 seasons pretty much full pelt, well, that's not fair. Liverpool just kind of turned up. Yeah, it's
and
so
City,
there is
and City suddenly dropping way back. It's almost like, you bastards, why are you doing this now?
No, I think done that last couple of seasons. So
yeah,
there is a bit of that. I don't think Arteta helps. I would take that point. I think he's far too emotional. He buys into things. I would agree. I'll be interested to see how Arsenal fans, just the general, because he's quite a spiky character. Opposition
he's got
fans,
a generic
media who.
Sorry, mate. I was going to say he's got like a generic Basque temperament, a stereotypical Basque temperament. I don't know how people sort of deal with that at points, like Pep.
Yeah, I wonder if his handling of the party situation during last season at times, if that was up here, I can imagine words being pulled in all directions, internally, certainly externally. And as he is quite a spiky character, so I'm a wee bit surprised I've not seen a lot more. Well, he has to go. He fronted up, Arsenal were a disgrace, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure there are bits of it because it's the internet, but I just haven't seen or heard the kind of volume that I maybe would have expected, but maybe that's just being a Scottish football fan that colours those expectations. Listeners, please post comments if you wish. I'll try and read them all and get them. We will have a Q&A at the end. I guess the only bit of admin that we need to mop up, because we didn't, this is our first show after the final weekend, was the Champions League shakedown. And Forest, as I feared, David, just didn't have enough. And Chelsea, as they would show quite a lot in that last week of the season, both domestically and in Europe, and indeed as we speak now with this kind of Disney Cup thing, they just kind of got their shit together and did business and walked away. Thank you very much.
Yeah, they did. And look, at the end of the day, you end up where you deserve to end up. I think if and we just mentioned that they're with Arsenal, you don't get to say that there were external factors. Forest slightly ran out of legs, which is totally understandable. Some of their key players who'd been on fire for most of the season, let's be fair, the last couple of weeks dried up a little bit. Chris Wood, for example. But it's a shame, actually, and it's a bit like movies, a shit ending can really spoil it. I hope Forest fans, once they get over that disappointment, are now sitting going, nobody, and I do mean nobody, thought Forest were going to be in Europe this season. It just did not happen. Nobody
the manager
was
was probably of people's list to get sacked the first.
Exactly right. So it was, and certainly to become this side that everybody really admired and enjoyed watching the way they went about it. They achieved an awful lot last season. Now they may still end up getting promoted into the Europa League with all the Crystal Palace and Lyon controversy. We hear tonight that Lyon are going to be allowed to play in Europe next season, which does mean that there's this issue with Crystal Palace, who may drop to the conference, and that would send them up. But even in the conference, you haven't been in Europe for over 30 years, and you go into a competition that realistically you can win. You have you would be among the favourites, I would say. It's pretty good. Now, this season, we'll talk about it in a few weeks, but this season will be more difficult because you're a more respected outfit now. People are going, that'll be a tough game, and the other teams will be doing that as well. You don't have the element of surprise that you carried for a few months. People know how you play, and your best players might get picked off. Anthony Elanga, currently, of course, the Newcastle bound. So all of that will come to the fore. I get how disappointed they are, but I can't help but think Champions League would have been too early for them because it's a harsh environment. It's a harsh environment, and 8 matches in it. It's not beyond belief they could have been right back at the other end of the table this season. So go into basically you can qualify out the conference group with your reserves, right? And then you can have a right go at it in the second half of the season when you should hopefully have secured pretty much your league status, and the 3 promoted clubs are all about to get relegated as usual. Then, yeah, but it is a slight shame that there was a sense of disappointment. But I don't think they blew it. I think Villa blew it. I don't think they blew it.
So on Forest, just very, very quickly, they kind of did what they did a mini Chelsea where they signed 28 players in one window, and then they survived through that and then managed to get the good ones and then get rid of the other ones. And I wonder if Chelsea were thinking, look, that's kind of what we're doing, just on a much, much bigger scale. And it's worked for Forest, the strides that they've made. And Chelsea have made strides. They're back in the Champions League. And I wonder if they
should win could be the world champions for the weekend.
Could be the world champion. But if they trim their squad down to the players that are actually good enough to play, then it could be a challenge next year. I think throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks can sometimes be an all right idea if it's a more medium-term plan rather than, for this season, hopefully we'll get it going. But over 3 or 4 seasons, it might, if you trim the fat out your squad, it might work.
It's hard to take Marianakis.
Yeah, I was going to say, they just need a real cool operator at the head of the club.
No, I know.
This is the thing. No, it's hard to take him seriously, right? Because he looks like Bluto. He's quite clearly insane. I'm not going to say what he might be in real life because he's very litigious. But he has a reputation. But he has run a successful football club in Greece. And it might be that he actually does know what he's doing underneath all that, how will I put that? That persona, and
it's caricature.
It's caricature, but he might actually know what he's doing. Bowley and Clearlake have been there now. That you would expect them to have learned stuff by now. You really would, right? They've been there long enough, and they're in a decent position. I agree with Jack. I really like João Pedro as an addition. I think he's a very good addition. I really like Liam Delap as an addition, incidentally. I know he's not the most glamorous, but that boy's good, and he gives them something they don't have, which is an option to go long, and a guy who is for a team that want to press, a Liam Delap is absolutely essential because he never stops. He leads your press and he never ever stops. So I agree with Jack. However, and we'll come to this in our season preview, I strongly suspect this Club World Cup is going to have an effect, certainly at the start of the season.
Yeah, it certainly will. I also wouldn't be surprised if Forest did have a jolly old time in Europe, but found themselves kind of sucked into some nonsense. As much nonsense as established Premier League clubs can ever find themselves, of course, these days. That'll be interesting to see. Quick word on Villa, Jack. They travel to Old Trafford, like many sides, believing
Fully
completely that
expecting.
they're just going to turn up and win, and hope that the results went the way that they needed them to, and they were, I mean, furious for good reason, I suppose, but they never responded to that. I thought they were quite flat, thought they were quite complacent, and they will be kicking themselves because they went big. They sold big, to be fair, in the window.
Duran, who is now on his way back,
but they went big to get that Champions League, but they enjoyed the Champions League as well, and they were a credit to the competition. I thought they were great value, but they will be licking their wounds, I would have thought, this summer.
But yes, I think we all said that they, of the teams that were sort of floating about up there, needed it the most. Not wanting it, but needed it because of their financial situation and sort of going sort of balls out, let's say. The financial side of things, they now own the most expensive women's team in the world now, or something like that. To get, I don't understand the ins and outs of what they've done there to get through PSRs by either buying or selling their own women's team. I don't understand it, but that's what they've had to do because they didn't get into the Champions League. So of course they'll be disappointed from top to bottom, because like you says, they really did enjoy it. Gave a really, I mean, like games like that, how often are they going to beat Bayern Munich? Once in a lifetime for like most teams' fans to even get the chance to play against Bayern Munich, obviously, unless you're playing Germany. But yes, they will be very, very disappointed, bulge out, and it backfired, and they're now jumping through hoops to not get fined or lose points or whatever the punishments could be for financial, not irregularities, but not meeting the guidelines.
Gentlemen, Manchester City had a difficult season, to put it mildly. Ended up not utterly dreadful, but by their standards, way off the mark, and certainly the middle looked almost comically shambolic. I think I said at the end of last season, when Pep was asked about the future, they just looked exhausted. Clearly, other issues in his life as well, possibly the pressure surrounding the club in general. They don't look much more refreshed after tumbling out the Club World Cup. Pep already talking about the fitness issues, and who knows what's going to happen. We'll just have to kind of wait and see. So planting that seed of tiredness, and I know, David, you're a big believer managers talk about tiredness, players feel it. They won't have to try hard to feel it. I wouldn't imagine. Are we expecting, a reset, switch back on, rejuvenation? I'm not entirely sure I'm convinced by it. Ages to go in the window, of course, but they tend to do business early.
Yeah, I think they've done some decent business, and I think that in Omar Marmoush, they actually have that's going to be a good signing for a number of seasons. But I still don't particularly like their defence. I think it was exposed for the level that it is without Rodri in front of it. I think that's. I honestly don't see how people could argue against that. Whether it's a case that it's slightly de-skilled because it hasn't, we talk about muscle memory, that they had lost that because they have less to do when he's there. He's back, of course, but I think it would be a hell of a lot to expect him to just drop straight in. He's picked up an injury already. Now that will happen. That is we've all seen that with guys who've been out for a year or so. They pick up little, muscle injuries and whatnot. And I don't think it's remotely fair to expect him to come in and play at that level. I can see them being actually a lot of fun next season, Martin. I can see them scoring loads of goals.
But a lot of fun last season.
Well, yeah, but I can see them scoring loads of goals, getting some good ones, some big ones, and then losing a match you maybe wouldn't have expected them to. Which is kind of why I don't see them winning the title next season, because I think there'll be defeats in there. And yeah, I do have big worries about the defence, and I think the goalkeeper, and again, maybe Indian summer is just about to hit, but there were a lot of signs, it wasn't one or two, that Ederson was no longer anywhere close to what he'd been. And yeah, I can see them having some really big wins, but I can see them taking, believe it or not, a couple of doings, potentially at Anfield or at Arsenal, whatever, much as they did last season. And because I think that there is and this is not a word I've ever associated with City under Pep since the first season, and that is they're brittle. And they're brittle. Some real quality players there, and I like Ike Nouri. I think he's a very good player. As I say, I really like Marmoush. I think he's a cracking player. But yeah, I still look at it and I think this still is a machine that is reliant on that central piece in the middle of the park, and it isn't there.
Craig Mitchell has a good point. Reinders should be an excellent piece of business for City. Takes the pressure off the Rodri position for now and will develop into anywhere in that midfield. Also, a bit of a refreshment of the coaching staff as well. And I know Pep certainly felt that was needed. You could look at it if you were inclined to negatively and say it's just a guy chucking dice here and seeing what roles. I'm just can they rediscover their aura, I think is your question, Davey, which is going to be tough to do. Conscious of time, Jack's got an absolute 8 o'clock deadline here, guys. Stay in Manchester, of course we do. Jack, they've been in business, Manchester United.
Right, so Manchester United, this is something that I do remember. Fucking hell, what a car crash. But so much fun, so much content. I wonder if this might sound a bit strange, they needed last season to get to their lowest point that they've been since Ferguson left, their lowest point, 15th, and then just to round off the season to that, not only that bad, you get beat off a team that are below you in the league, even though you're still 15th, is just completely bananas. It's the lowest that they've been that I can remember since I've started watching football, and they have made changes at the higher levels and stuff like that. So can they bring some sort of plan together, and will that plan come to fruition in the next couple of years? I don't think so, but I'm talking about, can they get back challenging in 5-7 years? That's what they've got to be looking at. And even then, I don't know, because of how low they are at the moment. But this is a 5-7 year, 10-year thing. This isn't like, well, how good would it be next season if they get the top half of the Premier League next season? Oh, that's an obvious an obvious betterment of what they did last season. But they're always fun to speak about, and it's because of how big they were and how rubbish they are now. So they'll always feed us content, which I am always for. But the lowest season that they've had, and then just to round it off with that, to get beat is just
by Spurs off.
Just absolutely
predictable though, because they just it's just an incredible. It's just I don't know. I mean, we love Cunha, Davey, on this show.
Very much so. Yeah.
Again, it's a big old job to carry that kind of burden on the shoulders. Anything that takes the burden off Bruno, I guess, is a help, because I think he is at his best when playing alongside good players that he can direct instead of trying to do absolutely everything himself, because he gets himself wound up and he becomes a bit of a liability in terms of discipline and tactical awareness and whatever else. So all the better, but they need 5, 6, 7 players of that quality all around the team. I mean, it's just not doable given the incredible, someone of our generation saying this, Manchester United can't afford to do what they want to do.
No, they should have taken the money for Bruno, by the way, given his age and given what you said, which is, although he is their best player, I think he stops the team functioning the way that Amarim, who is a systems coach, wants it to and needs it to. I do agree with you, though, that Cunha will be better. But to me, it looks as though Manchester United, again, are just trying this moments thing. Right, Cunha, he scores goals, and then you've got Bruno, he can do bits. And that can't work in the Premier League anymore. It just can't. I think that, I look at the side and there's a lot of players in there who are serviceable Premier League players, better than they were last season, right? I think that's fair to say. We all understand that last season was an absolute disaster, but the Mbeumo chase, I think, should be dispiriting for Manchester United fans because they've learned nothing. This is the De Jong chase from a couple of years ago. The guy wants to go to Manchester United. He has a release clause at 62.5 million. Brentford have said since minute one of this window, anyone who comes up with 62.5 million, then it's nothing to do with us. The clause is activated and off he goes. But anyone who comes up with 62.4 million is going to be sent packing. And United are still... How long's this been going on now? 6 weeks? And you'd assume it started before the end of the season. You'd assume the contact was made. They've learned nothing. And they will buy 2 or 3 good players. And I think they'll be better than they were last season, but that's a very, very low bar. And I think I just remember feeling so sorry for Amram by the end because he looked like a guy that was doing a prison sentence by the end of it. And unless they open up and you look at them and go, wow, they've got it, they've twigged, because the pressure at Man United never goes away. It's not going to change. They're still going to be the most talked about club. They're still going to be the club who generates the most headlines and most clicks, right? Regardless of, well, certainly for another couple of years anyway. And that won't change. That group of players last season shrunk because, as I say, if you took the team that played for Man U and played them at another club, they'd have got more points. They wouldn't have been anywhere near the top, but they'd have got more points than they did. Like I say, the Mbeumo thing, because weeks ago, it's like Mbeumo has chosen. And remember, we spoke about this in our own wee group, and we said, a bit surprised because he had other options, but the pool of United must still be there for players of a certain generation. Cunha said the same. And 6 weeks later, they haven't clinched this deal, despite the fact this is not a Daniel Levy negotiation. There's a release clause. And they're quibbling for, 3-4 million or structure or whatever. You get left behind when you do that. Other teams that you're trying to catch are all away doing their business and getting in, players that they've been after for a while. So, yeah, some of the players that they've been linked to, I mean, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I just think is insane bit of business. It's almost like they went. Do you remember that guy Anthony Martial? We need one of him again. That was a glorious thing. But listen, I don't think it's exactly news that we don't think that Manchester United know what they're doing, because it appears to all the world that Manchester United's management team are trying to demonstrate to the world, look, we don't know what we're doing. And to me, the simple deals to get done this year were Cunha and Mbeumo. You could have had them in at training. They do have Cunha, to be fair, but you could have had them both in, and you could the more difficult deals you could have been, away doing just now. And they cannot, for love nor money, get rid of these 5 players that they have told the world, by the way, these 5 are either shite or arseholes, and we don't want them. And then they're sitting there going, why is nobody buying our shite arseholes?
That's the big thing, Davey, is the arsehole thing. They seem to attract arseholes. Anthony being one, Garnacho being another. When was the last time you've seen a player of a Premier League football team putting on their social media or getting pictured in other teams in like Arsenal Villa stuff?
Yeah,
that's the type of people that's the type of characters that seem to want to play for Man U.
But can you, in their current situation, attract serious options? You're not just dealing with assholes and people say, I'm not interested in winning thing. They're just
that's just where they are. Yeah,
it's a glitzy badge, and
I'll be famous. I'll be a superstar because I'll be on the telly every week.
Exposure.
I'm not good enough to go to Liverpool. I'm not good enough to go to Liverpool or Arsenal. Yeah, right. I'm not good enough to go even to Chelsea or Newcastle. So I'll go there, and they still have the pull from people who were 10, 15
They
years.
still pay the wages as well. They still pay
and they
the
still
money.
pay enormous wages. So in many ways, they act like a big club in certain ways, but not in others. Listen, sorry, Man U fans, but if you're expecting redemption next season, I'm sorry, I really don't see it.
Yeah, either 12 years from a title. I wouldn't bet on any in the next 12 years either. I think it's just a ship that's just going to be so big to turn around, especially when the other machines in the water are far better, far faster, far bigger, and it's interesting. Listeners, watchers, viewers, if you've got any questions you want to ask, please fill them up now in the comments. We'll get to them. Before we get to a Q&A and predictions, Davey, Thomas Franks is now manager of Tottenham Hotspur. Postecoglou was for the off after the Europa League triumph and then utterly battered by Brighton in a very predictable way on the final day of the season. Not sure what his next job will be, but I'm sure there'll be Rangers fans sucking him off somewhere. But Frank, our big Tam, your boy, big step. They tend to ruin managers, this club, regardless of who they are, regardless of what style, type, profile this club eats you up, spits you out. What happens next?
I'm slightly worried for him. Over and above that Tottenham thing that you said, which you were 100% accurate about, that you have that irrational thing that football fans do, and certainly the media will do because they really like Big Ange, was, and I say Big Ange not because I'm fond of the guy, but because that's the caricature that they liked, right? He was entertainment, he was clicks, even when it was going badly. But because he won the trophy in the last game, you know that if Frank gets off to a bad start, people will say, oh, you made a mistake. So there's that instant pressure built in. What worries me is, did he just stay at the previous club a bit too long? And I'm getting David Moyes to Man United vibes there, where it was, you've got a guy who's completely used to having everything at the club run the way he likes it, the way he wants it, who'd built up the power base within that club to get everything the way he wanted it. And now he's going in and it's a totally different environment. Whereas I think a manager who moves up every 2-3 years, maybe, I think is a bit more adaptable. It kind of depends, because Tottenham, if they're thinking that they're going to jump from like 15th to 3rd, with a significant squad refresh, I don't really understand that now. They're trying to bring in Kudus from West Ham, who I like, is a good player.
Yeah, I like that.
You would expect them to be better defensively this season, and they're potentially going to sell Romero. They still have Van de Ven, so they still have a couple of good players there. I don't know. I just have slight fears for him. But he is a good manager. He's shown a good manager. He knows his way around the Premier League, and clearly he's had an ability to get players to listen to him. And the argument I've heard from Spurs fans that were concerned about it is they say, but he's not dealt with this, this level of superstar player. And I'm like, lads, not to quote a cliche here, but you're Tottenham. You do not have that level. This is not Arsenal or Chelsea. You've got a lot of guys in that squad who I think, if they've got any sense, will listen to a manager and potentially go on and do something. Champions League as well, which is a complication. Although it's great for the club and for the fans, it's a complication from a management point of view. I don't know. I'm interested. I'm rooting for him, really am. But I've got the ick, Martin. I've got the ick.
Yeah, well, it's a nightmare job. It's a poison chalice. A couple of questions, but just before we go, next season, as it always is, Jack, is okay. You've impressed me. Can you make the next kind of step? Couple of clubs just to think about. Eddie Howe and Newcastle back in Champions League, and they've had a great season. They've got that trophy thing off the back. I understand. Well, my understanding was that they had room in terms of PCR to actually, or PSR, sorry, to move. What's going to happen there? Do they need, as I think we've said pretty consistently on this show, they need a couple. They next level players, which of course they can afford technically, but whether they will be allowed to, and can he manage that? Can he take them forward?
Yes. So I mean, there's guys like Jamal Lascelles, for example. I'm saying I'm not picking on somebody, but I'm going to specifically pick on this guy. He's still getting a game for Newcastle, you know. So that's when you kind of know that their squad is not at a level where they can compete on many fronts when that's your sort of fourth choice centre back or whatever. However, we've said this many times. Is Eddie Howe the guy that gets them to where they are now, and then they look elsewhere? I think Davies brought it up a few times. Kind of almost similar to Mikel Arteta, where he's done what he can do, and do they need somebody else? And these PSR rules seem to be a pain in the arse, because why can't they, if they want to go out and spend their money, just let them, man? It'd be so much more fun for us. But that's not the way the cookie crumbles. They've done well. I think they'll do. I know we don't want to do predictions, but I think they'll do similar next year. I don't think they'll get much. I don't think you'll see a massive.
And if it is that, Jack, if it's Champions League qualification, just miss out. Champions League qualification, just miss out, which would appear to be maybe the pattern. Do the lads, the Piff boys, say, right, Eddie, thanks for your time. You've really established this club.
I think they've got to.
We need something a bit more dynamic. Yeah, Davey, we referred to them earlier. So impressive at Wembley. This would be heartbreaking if they can't take their place in Europe, but rules are rules. Regardless of that, can Glasner and that unit that he has there, that squad that he has there, take a next step forward, or really have they aced out in winning a cup? They're not going to. Or can they? Could we seen Forest obviously get very, very close to Champions League place? Could they see that as an option? Are they big enough to do that? I'm not entirely sure they've got the size of squad as much as I like quite a few individuals in it. And if they have reached their mountaintop, should Glasner be looking around for the next move?
No, this is a level. This is as good as it gets for Crystal Palace, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think if he achieves comfortable, that shouldn't have changed. And you know, the fans may be kind of, the next level. It can be a curse for football fans that there is no next level. You don't have the squad to do it. You don't have the money to do it. You will lose, by the looks of it, Eberechi Eze this summer, same as you lost Elise last year, same as you lost Zaha the year before, and then next year it will be Wharton. And I think Gay might go as well this summer. So you're going to lose a lot of these players. Now, what Crystal Palace have been phenomenal at is finding more of them. But you can't find, a 22 of them. You need money for that. No scouting system in the world can bring that amount of players in at one time. So, no, if I was Palace, and I think that their owner is sensible enough to go, let's have a crack at Europe and enjoy it if it comes to pass. But success for us, if we finish 14th next season and, there's not any last month drama, I think they're doing really, really well. Glasner, personally, if I was his advisor, I'd be saying this is as hot as you're going to get now.
That's what I mean, yeah.
If a job comes in, then you should take it. I would agree with that. But I think, and let's not, by the way, people will say, well, what about a bit of loyalty? Palace were thinking about sacking him in October, right? And he picked up some results and they kept him. So it works both ways. So no, this Palace are not going to finish sixth next season, right? And they're not going to regularly finish sixth ever. So next season, survive again, do it comfortably. That's good. Have another crack at the cups. You enjoyed that. Your boys got a taste for it, but they're not going to. Their squad is not going to be as good as it is this season or was last season. To them, I don't see it.
Get out of Dodge. Have Brentford replaced Frank yet?
Yes.
Forgive me, I'm trying to get Andrews. Keith Andrews, of course. Well, that will be interesting because they do tend to get those appointments pretty much bob on.
But while since they've had to do it, though.
Yep, we shall see. A couple of questions. If you have them, listeners, don't be shy. Get them on the comments. We'll read them out. We probably have enough time. Do you think the upcoming season could be the last for Pep? Well, I guess everything's possible. I think it might be, David.
I agree with you.
For a variety of reasons.
I think so. I think that I think they might give him the opportunity at the end of the season to, shake hands and.
Aye.
I thought this season might have been his last.
Well.
I think we all did, and then he signed that contract, and we were saying, are they playing 4D chess? Does that settle things down? It never did. But I thought this could have been his last season. Next season, probably.
I'd be surprised.
They'll never sack him publicly, and like midway through a season, they'll never do that, and they never should. But I think I could see at the end of the season them both going, do you know what? It's time.
I need a break. Yeah.
Craig Mitchell, if we have another season or more of 3 up and same 3 straight down, how do we solve this? A lack of jeopardy is a big worry for me and should be for the league. David, do we have an NFL?
It's not a big worry for the 17 teams who are currently in, and that's why there will be nothing done about this whatsoever, because turkeys are not going to vote for Christmas. I think the lack of jeopardy is, as a neutral, as a fan, I think it's bloody annoying. Jack is, a bins connoisseur, and he was
a bin man and boy,
and he was denied a bin day last year. I hope Leeds can do a bit more. Burnley actually might be reasonably placed to put in at least a good survival bid because they can defend. Right, and they will not, they're not expansive team. They're not going to come up and let teams batter them down. It will be, I think, Burnley's problem will be more the other end. Can they score enough? But it's a problem for us as fans. I don't think it's a problem for the teams who would vote on it to change it.
And then if you look at the teams that were down there, not even like in the relegation zone, just down at the bottom, you've got Spurs, Man U, West Ham, Wolves. These are teams that you would imagine could be better than that. And then are you thinking of Fulham, Palace, Brentford, Bournemouth? Are they going to suddenly be 30 points less off next season? And it is, I agree, I think it is a problem that I don't know how to solve. So I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, who knows? I think Leeds and Burnley do look a wee bit better placed than what came up last season, but the proof in the pudding, the Premier League is evolving away from the Football League, and maybe the answer is just to have a kind of European Super League or something.
Sunderland are done. Sunderland are doomed, by the way. They are going down.
Oh Jesus, yeah. But there'll be a couple of good games. Right, conscious of time. Predictors will do the top 40 in a kind of old top of the pops way, but fewer sex offenders. Ian Prosser, Colin Carstairs, Neil Shepherd, Neil and Scott Charles all of 108. Ian Rutherford is in joint 36 with Willie Chapman in 109. William Hughes, Gordon Allen, Tango, Dean Brooks with 110 in joint 32. Ewan third all by himself in 31 with 111. LD with 112. Martin Dick, Callan Gordon joined 28th with 113. Billy and Colin Simpson of 114, Graham Roy and the esteemed David Edgar with 115 in joint 24th, Callan Robertson in 23rd, in joint 21st place, Martin McInnes and Jack Shaw with 117, and David Black and George Higgins with 118, so creeped into the top 20 there, but we will pick that back up. Very quickly, boys, can we do a kind of team of the year? Matt Sells and goals, presumably.
Matt Sells and goals for me, yes.
Right back.
Right back. I kind of struggled with this one. Who's the boy that plays for Crystal Palace? Munoz, I thought was great.
Munoz, yeah.
Thought he was great, but no, he was the only one I sort of picked out. Van Dijk, a toss-up between either of the Forest ones, but I went for Milankovic, and then left back was a tough one as well, and I just had to go for Guardiola because I couldn't really think of any other left back that
I don't think it's been a great. There's not been a brilliant. There's been some clever signs at left back, but I don't think there's been any outstanding left backs.
I went for Kerkez from Bournemouth. Now with Liverpool, of course. Oh, yeah. So I went for Munoz of Crystal Palace at right back. Van Dijk. I went the other one, Jack. I went Murillo.
Did you? Yeah.
Big Brazilian lad. And I went for, as I say, Kerkez.
I'll take Kerkez and Munoz. Van Dijk, absolutely. So I'm going to have to break this. I'll go with Murillo, although I think Saliba and Gabriel are absolutely superb.
Still brilliant,
yeah. Declan Rice.
Yes.
Declan Rice.
Gravenberch, presumably.
Yep.
Surely.
My third was McAllister. Alexis McAllister.
I don't think you meant Gary, so we're cool.
I considered McAllister, but it was a kind of tough one. But again, maybe just showing a bit of bias for a side that I thoroughly enjoyed watching last season. I went for Morgan Gibbs-White. I'm not expecting him to make the final 11, no.
No, I'll take that. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Salah out on
funnily
the
enough,
right-hand side.
Yeah.
Isak through the middle.
I went Isak just ahead of Chris Wood.
Yes, I actually picked both Isak and Chris Wood, and I know that neither of them are famous for playing out on the left.
He won't let you. Yep, I've tried this before. He doesn't.
Right, so Isak, and then I don't have a left winger then.
Right, he doesn't let you do that. No, I mean you can have him in your team, but Martin
he's in my team.
For selection. Yeah,
I'm loving two of those. Who's going to get shifted out left? I mean, I want part. I know he
you couldn't play either of them out left.
No, absolutely. I'm not fucking Duncan.
No. Like I've made my peace with.
It's quite all right.
That's it. It's done.
I know he tailed off, but I think it's hard to, or we shouldn't forget just how incredible Cole Palmer was the first half of that season. I don't know where I can fit him in though.
He played his best games from where Salah plays. You know, that's what I would argue. But
he's got a point there, Martin. He does have a point.
Who we chucking out the left?
It's
Gordon.
Anthony Gordon, but he was in and out.
He dropped at the team. Harvey Barnes came in ahead of him towards the end of the season. So and he got himself sent off there.
Probably people screaming that are listening, somebody that we forgot about. But
no, I mean at Arsenal they had problems in that area all season. Newcastle, as we've mentioned, Villa again, good, but I don't think that Morgan Rogers, we could put him in there, I suppose. But
he was fantastic. Like he was like really key to everything that they did. So I'd be happy with that.
You could, fuck it, Morgan Rogers. Yeah, and I really
a problem.
Like him.
A problem position, gentlemen. Open my little book here from I think early September. We used to do this before a ball was kicked, and David said, "No, we need to know who comes in. We need to know who's actually going to come in the door."
I'm sticking to it for this season, but yeah, I hate this bit.
Right, I'll tell you what, because I've lost what I should have had. I'll pick it back up. Let's do the remainder of the predictors then, while I try and scurry about and find this. Okay, Chris Manson had 119. Myself, 120. Scott White, Tom McDavid, 121. A few people in 123 in joint 11th. Andrew Cunningham, Jack Mayer, Scott Cameron, Michael Elliott had 123. Luke Randall had 125. Scott Hamilton 126. Joint 7th, Ian Sterling. Ross Edgar had 130. Jack Skinner was in joint 4th place with Robin Balfour and Ronnie Patterson on 136. Stuart Mitchell had 137, which just leaves 2 battling it out for the top. It was a really disappointing final day. The scores were not good, gents. Just 3 absolute shaggers got 7 points. Ian Ogilvie, Willie Chapman, and me, but that has not really affected the overall scores. For the first time ever, we have a tie. Craig Cassell's, Graham Ross finish on 1-4-1. So we're going to have to. What we're going to do, David? Just split the money. What do we do?
We're going to split. We're going to split the
winnings. Never seen this before.
So usually 150 and 50, but you'll both get 100. However, the Seagulls metaphysical trophy, you're only going to have to imaginarily have it for 6 months each, and then return it to us via the medium of thought this time next year. But congratulations, you're all winners. But in another more accurate way, the winners are the 2 lads that Martin just mentioned. So if you can drop me an email to david@heartandhand.co.uk and I will fire you off the money by. I need your bank details. Not that sounds as though I'm like, a scam. It's not. I need just your bank details with your sort code, account number, not anything else, and I will fire you off your £100 each. So well done, lads. And you've literally never had it in 7 years. Next year we'll probably have like a dance off or something if it happens again.
Yes, so it is unprecedented. I imagine that one of them got more correct scores that you could have said wrong, but the admin.
I'm already pieing this job next year. Anyway,
I know.
Well done, the two of them. It's as we know,
done.
a hard league, and as we're about to find out, the predictors then, the season predictors for the title: Jack, Manchester City; me, Manchester City; David, Arsenal. So.
Well, I got a moral victory there. Like Arteta would like. Me and Mikel both got a moral victory there.
Jack making up the top four, so you get City, Arsenal, Liverpool, and Newcastle. So that was
close-ish. All right.
Not bad.
Good. For me, Arsenal, Liverpool, City. I went for United. My thought process was he will get sacked mid-season, and were they not third or something when he gets sacked?
Yeah, they were 4 points off Champions League places when they sacked him.
Yeah, that's right. So they were up there, and I thought, right, they'll do that. They'll get something in. They'll get that boost, and they'll go forward instead of plummeting to the.
They got the anti-boost. Yeah.
Unfortunately, Sir Jim had the same thought process you did.
Yeah, and David similar. City, Liverpool, and Newcastle, I think, in your top four, so not bad. Relegation: Everton, Southampton, Leicester. Jack. So again, 2 out of 3. Southampton, Ipswich, and Everton. I just felt they were circling that drain, but they were very much saved. And Everton, Southampton, and Leicester, Davy, similar. So we got 2 out of 3 right there.
Everton would have gone down under Sean Dyche.
Yeah, David Moyes came back and done a great job.
100% convinced.
Oh yeah, no, he did. It was one of the moments of the season for sure. That sack race, Eric Ten Hag, Jack. I don't think he was first. Sean Dyche, David. I don't think he was first. I had Gary O'Neill. Was he first?
I think Gary O'Neill was first,
yes. Yeah. Well done, me. I think he was. I just should have checked. David, you had Kai Havertz as Golden Boot winner, which was...
Oh, well, he would have been if he hadn't got injured.
Very brave of you. Isak, Jack. Yeah. Mo Salah second? For me. Mo Salah for me. So other than my Manchester United shout...
You've done really well there.
Oh no! The first managerial sacking of last season. Sorry, Martin. I'm taking a prize off you. It was Eric.
Was it Ten Hag? Was it?
It was Eric. Yes, I've just double checked.
Did I just win that then?
Jack won that. And I'm afraid, Martin, that by the way, don't you dare try and salvage after naming Manchester United in the Champions League place. Nothing you do after. To then try and present to the viewing audience to say, oh, but I got Mo Salah might score some goals. No.
Well, right. No one else said them. Thank you, boys. It's quite clearly, as has been displayed last season has been closed in my mind. There's a ribbon on it. It's filed away. I thought it was shite. I'll be honest. Poor EPL, and hopefully there's just a bit more about next season, as there has been, of course, over the last few seasons. But yeah, I am mentally blocking it as we speak. Cheers, Jack. I know we've kept you 7 minutes over.
It's all good. It's all good. But yeah, it was absolutely. When you look back on it, the Sky Sports used to do that sort of highlight reel of the season. This one would be a short one, man. It's been garbage. Yeah.
But next year, lads, right? There's always next year. And for neutral EPL fans, that's the case. We'll have Arsenal, we'd expect to be stronger. Liverpool, what happens now? That'll be interesting. Newcastle, possibly stronger. Chelsea, Jack mentioned, they're the world champions. Well, they'll beat our PSG Sunday. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting season next season. And let's hope we get a wee bit, because I don't. As we sit here, and this is maybe a bit unfair in Liverpool, I don't see an outrageous they are going to win the league team, which is half the battle at the start of the season. I think there's a few that if they, for the first time maybe in decades, a couple of teams, if they get a tailwind behind them, you
Liverpool
never know.
dropped points in 13 of their games. They
That's
dropped
what I mean.
points in 33% of their games last year and
Somebody
still won
gets
the
up
league by
and
10 points.
loads
That's
of
wild.
stuff. If I was Newcastle or whatever,
Yeah.
because if the super clubs get it. Anyway, we'll be back soon.
We will be back. Thank you, listeners, for taking time out on a beautiful summer's evening. You do make the show, and we're looking forward to getting back in mid-August. And where Match of the Day will be pun-free for the first time in a generation. Thank the Lord. Until next time, bye for now.